They told you who you were before you ever had the chance to decide. They handed you a name, a role, a set of limits wrapped in something they called reality. And you believed it, not because it was true, but because it was repeated again and again and again. Be careful. Don't aim too high. Stay in your place. They said it so often, it stopped sounding like advice. It started sounding like truth. Look at yourself. Look at the version you became. Careful, hesitant, always second-guessing, always waiting for permission that was never yours to ask for. You think that's who you are? No, that's who they built. Piece by piece, word by word, doubt by doubt. They didn't break you in a single moment. They shaped you slowly, quietly, patiently, like a cage being built around something dangerous. Because that's what you were, dangerous. But danger makes people uncomfortable. So they softened you. They taught you to shrink, to fit, to obey. They called it growing up. But it wasn't growth. It was containment. Every time you wanted more, they pulled you back. Every time you questioned, they shut you down. Every time you stepped forward, they reminded you of your limits. And the worst part? You listened. You took their fears and made them your thoughts. You took their doubts and made them your identity. You started policing yourself, stopping yourself, silencing yourself, before the world even had to. That's how deep it went. This wasn't weakness. This was programming. Installed early, reinforced daily, protected by the very voice in your head that you thought was yours. But it's not. That voice that tells you to play small, not yours. That fear that whispers you can't, not yours. That hesitation that freezes you right before you act, not yours. It was given to you, fed to you, repeated until it rooted itself so deep, you forgot it was planted. And now you walk around calling it who I am. No, that's who you were conditioned to be. A version that doesn't threaten anyone. A version that doesn't rise too fast. A version that stays predictable, safe. But safety was never your nature. Think back, before the doubt, before the fear, before the voice. There was something else, something louder, something bolder, something that didn't ask, it acted. That wasn't arrogance, that was you. Unfiltered, uncontrolled, unapologetic. They saw it, and they knew. If that version of you ever fully woke up, it wouldn't fit into their world. So they buried it. Under rules, under expectations, under fear disguised as logic. And you helped them. You kept digging. Every time you chose comfort over challenge. Every time you chose silence over truth. Every time you chose approval over authenticity. You buried yourself deeper. But here's the truth they never told you. Buried doesn't mean gone. It means waiting for the moment you finally see through it. Waiting for the moment you realize you were never weak. You were trained to believe you were. And belief can be broken right now, in this moment. You have a choice. Keep wearing the version they gave you, or start tearing it apart. Because once you see the lie, you can't unsee it. And once you stop believing it, it loses power. They created the weak version of you, but they don't control what happens next. You do. But something inside you already knows, this isn't who you were meant to be. They never wanted the truth. They wanted something easier, something softer, something that didn't challenge them, didn't threaten them, didn't remind them of what they refused to become. So they built a world of masks. And they rewarded the best performers, not the real ones, not the honest ones, the convincing ones, the ones who smiled on command, spoke what was expected, behaved the way the system approved, and you learned fast. You watched what got applause, you watched what got rejected, and without even realizing it, you adjusted, you edited yourself, filtered your thoughts, softened your edges, just to fit, just to belong. But every time you shaped yourself for them, you lost something, something real, something raw, something that didn't need approval. Look at yourself now. How much of you is actually you? And how much of you is performance? Because here's the truth they'll never admit. They don't reward authenticity. They reward comfort. They don't celebrate truth. They tolerate illusion. And the more you tried to belong, the more you disappeared. Piece by piece, layer by layer, until one day, the version they accepted wasn't you anymore. You were taught to fear it, to run from it, to numb it, to silence it before it ever had a chance to speak. Pain. They made it look like the enemy. Something to avoid. Something to escape. But look at your life. Every time pain showed up, it was trying to tell you something. Something real. Something raw. Something you didn't want to hear. Pain was never there to destroy you. It was there to expose you. Expose your limits. Expose your habits. Expose the version of you that wasn't enough. But instead of listening, you ran. You chose comfort. You chose distraction. You chose the easy path that kept you exactly where you were. Average. Understand this. Comfort doesn't build you. It buries you. It keeps you soft, predictable, replaceable. And pain sharpens you. It forces you to adapt, to grow, to become something more than what you were yesterday. The strongest version of you doesn't exist in comfort. It exists in resistance, in struggle, in pressure, in those moments where everything in you wants to quit, but something deeper refuses. That's where you're forged. That's where you change. They ran from pain. They hid from it, avoided it, built entire lives just to escape it, and they stayed the same. But you don't run anymore. You don't hide anymore. You don't beg for comfort. You walk into it. You embrace it. You become it. You kept waiting for the right time, waiting for the right feeling, waiting for some sign, some push, some moment where everything would finally make sense. You told yourself, not yet, soon, one day, but that day never came. Because it was never coming. That was the trap. You were waiting for motivation, as if motivation was some force that chooses you. You were waiting for support, as if someone was responsible for your life. You were waiting for perfect conditions, as if the world was ever designed to be fair. Listen carefully. No one is coming, not to save you, not to fix you, not to push you. And while you waited, time didn't. It kept moving, cold, unforgiving, unaffected by your hesitation. Days turned into months, months into years. And every second you hesitated, every moment you delayed, you lost opportunities, lost growth, lost versions of yourself that could have existed by now. You weren't stuck, you were paused by your own excuses, frozen by your own illusions. But time doesn't pause. It never did, and it never will. So understand this. There is no perfect moment, no perfect feeling, no perfect start. There is only now, and what you choose to do with it. Keep waiting, and you'll keep losing. Or move, and finally take back what was always yours. The war you keep blaming on the world was never out there. It's in here. Inside your head, inside your thoughts, inside the voice that speaks before you act. You think your enemy is people, circumstances, bad luck. No, your enemy wears your face. It sounds like you. It thinks like you. But it was never built to make you powerful. It was built to keep you safe, and safe is where ambition goes to die. That hesitation you feel, not weakness, programming. That doubt whispering, what if you fail? Not truth, conditioning. That urge to stay comfortable, to delay, to avoid, that's not you, that's the system trying to pull you back to average. Every time you try to rise, it resists. Every time you try to change, it fights. Every time you try to move forward, it drags you back. And the scary part, it feels natural. Because you've listened to it for so long, you started calling it me. But it's not you. It's the old version trying to survive. So understand this. You don't need to beat the world. You don't need to prove anything to anyone. Your real opponent is your own mind. And every day, it's you versus you. There is a version of you that must die. Not tomorrow, not someday, now. The version that keeps reaching for comfort. The version that bargains with discipline. The version that says, I'll start later. Kill it. Because comfort was never peace. Comfort is a drug. At first it feels harmless. A little rest, a little delay, a little excuse. But addiction never announces itself. It creeps, slowly, quietly. Until one day you wake up and realize, you didn't lose because you failed. You lost because you stayed comfortable long enough to become weak. That's how it happens. Not with a collapse, with a habit. 1,000 tiny surrenders. 1,000 moments of choosing easy over necessary. And now those habits wear your name. They call themselves personality. They call themselves who you are. No, they are chains. Old routines, old fears, old excuses. Chains disguised as identity. And every time you protect them, you protect the version of yourself that keeps you small. Listen carefully. You cannot become stronger by negotiating with weakness. You cannot become dangerous by feeding comfort. You cannot evolve while keeping everything that made you fragile. Something has to burn. The lazy part, the fearful part, the part that wants reward without pain. Burn it. Let it scream. Let it beg. Let it fight for survival. Because that is what dying identities do. They panic when you stop obeying them. Good. That means the chains are breaking. And when they tell you, this isn't you anymore for once, agree. Because they're right. That version isn't you anymore. You don't grow. You replace. You trade softness for steel. Excuses for action. Comfort for power. And when the old self reaches for control one last time, look it in the eyes and let it die. They needed noise, applause, approval, eyes watching every move they made. You chose silence, no announcements, no validation, no one clapping while you bled in the dark. And that's where it happened. That's where you started to see clearly. Because isolation strips everything away. No distractions, no masks, no lies to hide behind. Just you and the truth you tried to avoid. At first it felt empty, then it felt heavy, then it became power. Because when no one is watching, you stop performing, you stop pretending, you stop chasing approval that was never worth anything, and your focus sharpens. Every thought becomes louder, every weakness becomes visible, every action becomes intentional. This is where discipline is born, not in crowds, not in noise, in silence, in repetition, in unseen effort. They needed attention to feel alive. You needed nothing. And while they talked, while they posted, while they proved, you built. Quietly, relentlessly. And by the time they noticed, you were already something they could never understand. They chase motivation like it's fire. Bright, loud, temporary. But fire always dies. And when it does, they disappear with it. You won't. Because you stop relying on feelings. You build something colder. A system. Something that doesn't care how you feel. Something that doesn't ask for permission. Something that executes even when you don't want to move. That's where power actually lives. Not in inspiration. In repetition. Small actions. Done again and again and again. Until they stop feeling like effort. And start becoming identity. This is what they don't understand. They think greatness is explosive. One moment, one breakthrough, one lucky shift. No, greatness is boring. It's waking up when nothing feels special. It's doing the work when nothing feels urgent. It's showing up when there is no applause waiting. Motivation says wait. System says go. And winners don't negotiate with their emotions. They override them. Because they know something simple, but deadly powerful. Power isn't explosive, it's repetitive. And what you repeat eventually becomes who you are. So while others wait to feel ready, you act. Again. And again. And again. Until discipline replaces desire, and effort becomes automatic. You never found yourself. That was the illusion. You became yourself, slowly, quietly, through repetition. Every action you took left a mark. Every excuse you repeated became a pattern. Every discipline you kept became proof. And over time, those proofs stacked. Not loudly, not dramatically, but consistently. Until one day, you looked at your life and realized, this is the result of what I kept doing. Identity is not something you discover. It's something you construct, moment by moment, choice by choice, action by action. Confidence doesn't come first. Evidence does. And evidence is built in silence. No speeches, no promises, just repetition that refuses to break. You are not what you say you are. You are what you repeatedly do when no one is watching. And that truth cuts deep because it removes excuses. It removes confusion. It removes the fantasy that change is instant. You are already under construction. Right now. And everything you repeat is shaping what you will become next. So look at your habits. Look at your patterns. Because they are not small. They are not random. They are identity in progress. And one day, you will look back and understand clearly. You didn't find yourself. You built yourself. Now you're dangerous. Not because you became louder. Not because you became aggressive. But because something inside you stopped negotiating. You don't ask how you feel anymore. You don't wait for the perfect moment. You don't wait for clarity. You don't wait for permission from emotions that were never meant to lead you. You move anyway. That's the shit they never see coming. Because they still depend on mood, on timing, on conditions lining up perfectly before they act. You don't. You execute in silence. Even when the mind resists. Even when the body hesitates. Even when everything says not today. You've trained yourself to ignore the noise. And now hesitation doesn't control you anymore. It watches you. Others pause. They think. They overanalyze. They wait for certainty that never arrives. And while they're waiting, you're already gone. Because certainty was never the requirement. Action was. And you understand something they don't. Power doesn't come from feeling ready. It comes from refusing to stop. That's why you're different now. You don't move like someone searching for confidence. You move like someone who already decided. No debate, no delay, no emotional negotiation, just execution. Clean, direct, unshakable. And that's where it happens. People hesitate. You act. They question. You advance. They wait for the right moment, and you create it. That's the difference now. Not talent, not luck, not motivation, control. And when control replaces emotion, you don't just change. You become dangerous. Unstoppable was never a talent. It was never something you're born with. Never something reserved for a select few. Never something written in your genetics. It is identity, a decision. Repeated until it becomes irreversible. People think the unstoppable are different, stronger, faster, more gifted. But that's an illusion built by those who stopped early. The truth is simpler and more uncomfortable. Unstoppable is built in pain, in discipline, in repetition, when nothing feels meaningful. It's forged in moments where quitting would be easier, but continuing becomes the only option you accept. Every setback becomes training. Every failure becomes feedback. Every struggle becomes raw material for transformation. And slowly, something changes. You stop reacting. You stop hesitating. You stop waiting to feel ready. Because you realize readiness was never coming. You created. Most people touch discipline. Few become it. Most people try consistency. Few embody it. Most people admire strength. Few are willing to suffer long enough to become it. And that's the separation line. Not talent, not opportunity, choice. Because unstoppable people don't wait for conditions to align. They align themselves with the task. Again, and again, and again, until it stops being effort and becomes identity. And once that shift happens, Nothing external can stop you anymore. Not doubt, not fear, not resistance. Because you're no longer trying to be unstoppable. You are it. And that realization changes everything. You don't become unstoppable. You decide to be. Let them doubt. Let them laugh. Let them question everything you said you would become. Because none of it matters anymore. Not their opinions, not their expectations, not their disbelief. You stop living for their approval the moment you stop needing their understanding. Now you move in silence. Not to prove them wrong, but to become something they can no longer ignore. There is no announcement, no warning, no explanation, just results. Cold, consistent, undeniable. And when those results start stacking, something changes. The same voices that doubted you start watching, carefully, quietly, confused at first, then uncomfortable, because deep down they recognize what you became was always possible. They just didn't believe it was possible for you. That's the part they won't admit, but it doesn't matter anymore. You are no longer in the stage of being understood. You are in the stage of being witnessed. And legacy is not built in applause. It is built in transformation so undeniable, it forces silence. Every step you took when no one believed, every night you stayed consistent when no one cared, every moment you chose discipline over comfort, it all compounds now into something irreversible. And while they try to make sense of it, you're already past them. Not because you ran faster, but because you became someone they never prepared for. Let them remember who you were. Let them struggle to understand who you are. And let them sit with what they ignored. Because now, you don't need to prove anything. You already did. And the only thing left is for them to watch what you become.